Hello and welcome back to the Obojima Podcast. My name is Jeremiah and I am with Adam Lee today, and we are the writers of Obojima, two of them. The third one is not with us. He's searching for answers.
He has gone in search of answers.
And in this week, we're doing something a little unique. This is not just a regular writers meeting. Instead, we are going to we're going to just talk about if Adam and I tomorrow were going to run a campaign in Obojima, how would we start our adventures? And I'm going to start with this. We came up with the concept of this episode like a minute ago. So we have nothing pre-planned. There's going to be a decent amount of rambling leading into this.
But that's really how it all starts. Like, you've got to kind of explore the frontier. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot. Like, it is an overwhelming, like, how do you start a campaign? Like, that's a big, it's like the blank canvas to the artist, right?
Yeah. You know, this reminds me that I've completely abandoned the community here, but I mentioned like podcasts ago that I have a doc that I utilize to like start a world, which like, you know, I've always recommended that you start it in small town and then you expand outward. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of not necessary with Obojima because we're doing a lot of that for you. But, you know, the same thing I think works true for at least all of my campaigns where I generally start really, really small and then work my way out. I very rarely start in a grand...
Yeah. Especially for like a place like Obojima.
Especially for this crapple. Oh, you like that?
Yeah, that was it. No, like, but especially for Obojima, because it is a small, it should feel small. Like Obojima should feel, it shouldn't be like Obojima is caught in the cosmic war between galaxies. No, it's
Obojima like, fully reloaded.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, Obojima is a kind of cozy, small, comfy little place, and you start off like herding your goats in the morning, or
stop hurting them,
or hurting
leave them alone.
Yeah, and then you're like punished by the cosmic karma god. That's like, how dare you? But like or you're a coffee maker or something very simple where you're like trying to grow the perfect plant, or working with pixies to do something fun, like I'm having a garden or something like that. Yeah. Like it's not, you're not, I don't think you start off like, I'm going to be, an epic paladin. Like maybe like the session 0 of Obojima is really sort of like how you go from just a regular person to being kind of like an adventurer.
Yeah.
Not even a hero yet. Like you're just an like, you're the hobbit that wants to go beyond Buckleberry Ferry and see what else is beyond there. And everybody else is like, what are you doing? Why do you want to leave the village? So,
yeah, I mean, I think when we created Obojima, the goal was to really revel in these small moments. And I think that's also why when we talk about Obojima, we've always kind of expressed the concept that no one on the island is above level 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's just, like that you get at a certain point in time, you get into levels of magic that are just, crazy. And that doesn't really fit the vibe of Obojima. Now, Obojima has what I would say is a little hand wavy magic, in the sense that like, because the world is so filled with, the arcane, like things beyond, people are able to do things beyond their capacity a lot of the times with these incredibly powerful, potent magic spells, but they're not like time stop. They're not these types of things. Like a witch might be able to fully lock all of their house. Like the entire house is invulnerable. And in fact, that's, in one of the adventures, the entire house is invulnerable and all of the windows and doors lock. And it even has a little trap that shrinks people that come inside. And that is not like, there's no spells that allow you to do that. There's a lot of magic in the world that is like that, but it's never like, you know, it's always made for it's, you know, whenever you do that or whenever we introduce stuff like that, I think it's always meant to add to the whimsy and magical feeling, never to be powerful and dangerous.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of like the magic in D&D is meant to be powerful and dangerous.
Oh, for sure. And I think that you know, the more like now we're thinking about it, like as a DM and I'm going to create my Obojima adventure, you know, I'm thinking about my players and that what are their expectations, especially if they don't know Obojima. Like I show them the book cover and they look at the art and they're like, whoa, this is a different kind of evocative feel to this.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, it's not murder hobo D&D. So, you know, one of the things I think I'd like to play with is putting them in situations where there isn't just something you had to hit with a sword. Like, you know, like I would craft adventures or like quests or a situation where it brings out a different kind of role playing.
Yeah.
So I know like early on you had mentioned that like, what if there's this, you know, a little kid gets on a bike and then it gets enchanted and it kind of floats up into the air.
Yeah.
And then your quest as adventurers is like, how do you get this kid back? You know, like what do you know, as even like as first level adventurers, you're not able to fly yet. Maybe you have mage hand or something, but it's out of the reach or it's out of the range. And and the kid's like now kind of floating through the clouds and then dipping a bit, you know, like how do you solve that? So it requires them to use spells, to use their abilities in different ways.
Yeah.
But filling the adventure with things like that, I think then makes the players like have to play in a different way than they've maybe normally played, where it's like, oh, there's a bunch of hobgoblins and they're attacking a village and now we're going to go smash them, you know?
I think, you know, what I'm realizing now, as we're even saying it out loud, I think, you know, in standard D&D, we're so quick to jump past the first few levels. But in Obojima, I think those first few levels are super important.
Yeah.
And so it's like you really, as a DM, should revel in that moment where players are forced to have creative thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think too, because as a player, you have very little abilities. You don't have a lot of abilities at the moment. So sometimes you can kind of feel like this chokehold of like, what can I do? What can I, you know, how do I do stuff here? And I think that's part of the experience. You know, if we look back into like Studio Ghibli as inspiration, part of the experience is experiencing like, although I am slightly abnormal and above average with a few abilities, for the most part, I'm a human. I'm just a person who's trying to deal with this abnormal situation. And I think especially when writing adventures or writing a campaign, that those first 5 levels are going to be so important. And rather than rushing past them, you should really like sit in them. You should, it is a gentle walk, not a race, to get to 5th level.
Yeah, that's a cool way to put it. You know, it makes me think about like, you know, whenever I've played or run people through Call of Cthulhu, like your character is not supposed to go smash stuff. Like your character actually is very vulnerable, and so players who know how to play in that world will play it very carefully. But it is all about setting up your personality. Like, how does your character handle the mysterious, and how does your character, as a, you know, not a superhero, like operate in the story? And I think you're right. Like Obojima is this from 0 to level 3. I think that's really the kind of the meat and potatoes of Obojima. I think after that, it starts to get, I don't know, maybe it even loses a sense of like, I don't know, it kind of moves into maybe like once Ashitaka becomes infected and now he can just like lop people's heads off or shoot arrows and blow people up. Like it's like that is like, okay, well, but Obojima, I think it feels like this, like it's almost kind of a Cthulhu-y, at least when I'm thinking about it. It's like you've got this, sort of strange, you're in a village, but they're spirit people, but they're not odd to you because you've grown up with them for generations. Spirits have been, so they're just like part of, like they're your next door neighbors. But there are things that are mysterious outside of your village. And what are those things? Like, a Goro, like maybe not a lot of people have met that kind of a thing, or like a dragon frog. Like, that's like a legend you hear, but if you go out there, maybe you will meet one. And so I think another part of building sort of like the feel and vibe of Obojima is like starting off and making your village feel mundane. Even though it's got fun things to do in it, there's odd stuff that happens, like the kid floating away on the bike or something like that. But once you go outside of your village, it's like then to turn the dial up a little bit more and be like, this stuff is really mysterious even to you. Like, and building that level of it. And, and then maybe at some point, you have your first like close combat, and that should feel like, whoa, like we actually drew blades, like nobody got hit, but it was close, and then maybe, later on, then you actually get into a real full on fight,
I feel like there's a lot of different stories to tell in Obojima, but, I think at a certain point in time, you kind of go from like this first to fourth is you're kind of a basic human going, experiencing things and, trying to deal with them, and you have things to combat it. And then at fifth level, there's this hard difference where all of a sudden third level spells exist. And third level spells, I think, are kind of where the game shifts. Yeah. You get your flies, you get your fireballs, you get your things. I don't know. Those are the only two that I could think.
Blowing things up, lightning bolts. And
like there's at a certain point in time, the ability to fly drastically changes how the game, how challenges operate in the world. And then from 5th to 7th, you're kind of in this middle ground where I feel like, you're pretty competent and beyond. You're doing things that are significantly ahead in advance compared to a lot of other people. And then at another point in time, 8th through 10th, I would say you're now at the point where you're kind of like Howl almost. Yeah. Like you can imagine Howl and Howl's Moving Castle, where although he's on the back end, especially towards the end of that film, there's never a point in which he can't deal with the combatants, those big slimes or the other wizards. Like he always seems to come on top, even against giant airships full of other creatures. And I kind of feel like at 10th level, that's kind of where you're at for a majority of the things in Obojima. To the standard person, a 10th level wizard is like crazy.
Yeah, that is nuts. And I mean, like Howl has this thing of, like it's a give and take. Like if he uses his power, it's damaging to him in some way. Like he's kind of made a pact with, he turns into the crow vulture thing or whatever it is. And maybe, I mean, it makes me think that maybe that's something that we might want to build in later stuff for Obojima is like, here are things for higher level players, like,
And I definitely think I think just the nature of D&D lends itself to like that middle tier as like, there's a lot of things for that middle tier. So I think it's okay in that regard. But really when I bring all of that up, it's to say when planning out your campaign, I feel like the tone probably should shift a bit as the power raises. Because at a certain point in time, although you can have goofy adventures at 10th level, a 9th level character is going to solve this, all of the, the first, there's an adventure called The Curious World Within, which I just went through the editing process of, and Adam wrote, and it's 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 the adventure that you experience, kind of like your opening adventure. And to put into perspective our idea of what an opening adventure is, the entirety of that adventure is all based on the characters finding up a letter and returning a letter that's inside a house. Like that's that should put into perspective how we envision, adventures taking. Like a whole adventure is about like characters having to sneak into a home, get a letter, and then take it out. Obviously, it's a witch's home, and there's a bunch of interesting things that occur through magic and enchantments that are left around the house, and some of the creatures that are in there, like the witch's companion cat and things like that. But that's like the height of like an early level adventure. When you boil it down, it's like, hey, that house is locked. I can't get inside. Can you get that letter from inside and bring it back to me? Yeah. That's like the scope of the adventure. But that scope of adventure falls apart at a certain point in time. Eventually, a character above 5th level could just say, okay, I'm going to Misty Step inside. Yeah. And then, even if the things that occur in there happen, a 5th level adventurer would just be able to like
all kinds of spells.
I can't get on top of the table, I'm gonna fly. Yeah. Oh, I can't get to the thing that I need to get to, I'm gonna like there's just so many things a higher level adventurer would be able to do. And so when planning a campaign, I think you revel in that first 4 levels. Yeah. Then you need to plan difficulties in the mid tier that still I think can feel just as whimsical but can no longer be as mundane. Yeah. And then finally in that last portion of the adventure, it needs to feel more, there needs to be something more impactful that's driving the story along.
Yeah. And we've got some like stuff in the book where
we built the book out to be exactly that. But in general, when writing your campaign, I think that's something to consider. Yeah. Now, all of that being said, let's jump back to how we would start a campaign. So we've laid the groundwork on our thoughts on Obojima. Now let's talk about like what would we personally, what excites us about Obojima, and what would we start?
Wow. Yeah. Because I think it was the last thing I've been working on, which is the Wandering Door. We mentioned it in an earlier podcast. I would have them just see that thing skipping around in the distance. Okay. And that monster is a device you can use for really high level stuff, and you can do it for, a 0 level thing. Yeah. Just to try to finding a way to catch the Wandering Door or to trick it, is something that you don't have to be high level to do. Yeah. It's just good role playing or making your players think of creative ways to like solve this kind of impossible problem. Like you cannot outrun this thing. You're not able to magically attack it because you're low level. It evades, most of your attempts. It stays out of range, but it's a mystery, and it's also very Obojima, so, cause that's the other thing. I think the 2 things I'd want to hit my players with is like
a rock.
Yeah, it's a rock, and then hit them with like one of those wiffle bats, and then they'd be like, "Haha, you thought you came here to play a game, but no,
it's a sneak attack."
It's a sneak attack. Little did you know,
it's an intervention. Yeah, Adam, that's not an intervention.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, all right. But you just like set up. Here's sort of how this is the kind of world that you're going to play in, and then here's something weird in this world that's unique to this world. It's not something you would, it's very Obojima. So that would maybe be like a starting point, like something that is a mystery. It's very Obojima, and then go from there. But what would you do?
I don't know. I think I want to introduce first stage technology right away.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Because I think that's, so interesting, and making that a key aspect of a lot of the adventure is really great. So maybe if I started the adventures in one of the more like small towns and villages, like something rural that doesn't have a lot of the technology around, and then maybe have them, it's hard, right? Because there's a lot that, I guess, and this is a good question, is if everyone is from all around the island, if like, let's say I have a standard group and it's 4 players. And there's 4 different players, and one of them's from the Land of Hot Water, and 2 of them are from the Gift of Shiratashi, and the other one is a Dara from the Coastal Highlands, or not the Coastal Highlands, but the Blackwater Wetlands, from Rokala. They've all come to collect in an area, so they've experienced some amount of travel, and that's something that I think, is one of those. It's one of those. I want to write a book versus we're playing D&D.
Yeah.
Where it's like, in your head, you want them to experience first age technology as like this, like, I've never seen this before, or like I'm getting some of it for the first time. And because players tend to write their character backstory as pretty important, oftentimes you get characters like, I'm the prince of a land, or I'm the fallen knight of the last, the Crimson Guard, and I'm the last one alive. You get a lot of that. Yeah. You get a lot of what's her names from Nausicaa, who's like, I'm the last daughter of the castle in the sky. Which is great for a movie. Yeah. But like for players, it can be difficult because, that background, and that's always one of the other issues too with D&D is your background means that you have an amount of experience that, you can't really, you just have to play into that. Yeah. I think that's why Hayao Miyazaki has every one of his antagonists be a kid. Because it's like, they've experienced nothing. Everything's new.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe that is a thing that when, like if I was, okay, I'm making my campaign, I've got an idea. And then part of it is working with my players to build their characters and be like, all right, here's the map. Here's, all the places you can be from. And then, they're like, I want to be the forgotten emperor of, then it's like, well, here's the history of this place, like within that, there are no emperors here. There's no royalty. There's no, the probably the highest position are just like village elders or like some quirky mayor of a town who's just like, I wear the, a big festival hat every year. And I'm kind of, or like
you could be important in an organization.
Yeah. The truffle prince, you could want to be the postmaster general, but there's already one that exists, so it's like laying out for your players, like, this is the kind of, this is what we're working with people. And like within that, now make your character. And like kind of encouraging people to just make up mundane characters and then find the heroicness in that mundane character. Like, I mean, a good comp for this is like Star Wars. Like you roll up Luke Skywalker. He is basically a, moisture farmer. And he's just like, I'm a kid and I'm grumpy and Uncle Owen's like riding my butt and he's like, making me do all this work and,
making me farm all this moisture.
And, and I've got to go get these droids and, and all I want to do is, shoot womp rats and do the Kessel Run and all that. So, but ultimately, like he's 0 level, right? And so then, he gets to be first level when he goes to like Mos Eisley and he meets Old Ben and Old Ben's like, we got to go here. And then
he's like, and I trust you with my life.
I trust you. You're like, and it's the slower version of that. Yeah. So
with that,
it's like, you're not rolling up the Jedi yet. You're not rolling up the Emperor of,
So how do we start that? How do you start an adventure where, because everyone's going to show up into this town, most likely first level. So there's been experience. They have some experience to get to them to this point. And so what brings them to the same town is always something that's interesting. For me, the easiest, it's almost become a trope within my campaigns, which is like, the whole meet in a bar thing. I don't do that. Instead I go, oh, it's a festival. I always throw a festival as like the start of a campaign. It's so easy. It's almost too easy, suspiciously easy, because everyone, like the easiest, I mean, you throw a festival, it gives a reason for everyone to be in town. large groups of people there's always some nefarious ones in there. And then, you throw in a couple festival games and all of a sudden it's a way I've always found is a great way for players to like get to kind of experience who their characters are, like play around with like their voice and learn how they interact with people, and they get to play some games and maybe show off their talents. It's a good icebreaker, and then from there you can kind of leap into the adventure. There's always something that occurs at the festival, if it's a fight or if someone, something happens or whatever it is. And that really fits into Obojima, but I'm not going to play into that trope. I'm not going to be Jeremiah the Festival King this time.
You're going to subvert expectations.
I'm going to subvert expectations. Instead, I kind of am loving the idea of like the ragtag team that comes together at and this is a manga thing, so I apologize if you've never read early Dragon Ball, but at a certain point in time, there's like, they're all searching, they're all coming after the same quest. And they don't necessarily, like, they all want the same thing and they're working together, but like they're at odds with each other. In fact, some of them are almost all of them start with a fight with each other. Like Goku doesn't like Krillin. They don't like each other. They train together. They become friends. Goku doesn't like Bulma. There's like an argument and they, begrudgingly work together. And same with all these other characters. Sometimes they're fighting each other. They trap each other. They like pull tricks on each other, but eventually they work together to accomplish a task. And so I kind of like the idea of maybe somehow the adventurers are all, trying to accomplish the same thing separately for like, and they're almost at odds with each other, where it's like, I'm trying to get the MacGuffin, like I'm trying to find this vending machine. Maybe multiple wizards have hired all of them. They're like, there's a rumor that there's a stock of vending machines out in the woods that people haven't found, and they want one of them for themselves. And they've all been hired to find the one vending machine by different wizards.
That's interesting.
And so now they all collect in this small town. They're like, well, we need to get gold petals because we're trying to make a Diatomon or something like that. Or we're trying to make it to a festival because of course there's a festival. We're trying to make a festival down the road. We need some gold petals. I need some stuff. And so they all take on competing missions from different wizards and witches who want this one vending machine, which is out in the woods.
That's cool. So you're kind of introducing vending machines, which is first stage.
Yep.
You're introducing different witches. You could use different covens, so
coven
people
factions,
learn about all the covens. And then you introduce a location. Like, okay, you've got to go from, you're all in the Gift of Shiratashi or you're all in Okiri Village, and then you go to this other location, whether it's Yatamon or something like that. Like Yatamon's got a ton of vending machines. They're already kind of taken, but if these are like vending machines nobody's ever heard of or nobody's ever claimed. Yeah. So, or it is a vending machine. Yeah. And that's cool. Yeah.
I dig it.
You've accomplished ticked a lot of Obojima boxes.
I've got all the Obojima boxes. And I think the last Obojima box that I'm going to tick is I can do a fun little whimsical fight with some soda slimes in the vending machine.
Yeah.
But I can also introduce a spirit who perhaps is either living inside of the vending machine or near the vending machine or, like, I think part of the fun of Obojima is like this wacky interaction with these characters. So what if like the spirit is in love with the vending machine? Like it's an inanimate object, but it's like, oh no, that's Julie.
Yeah. Oh, the clearness of your glass.
It's like what's a fun spirit shape or something like that. Like maybe it's maybe it's like what's a cool spirit shape, like a giant otter or something like that, or
that'd be cool because it's like sinuous and like kind of slipping
like
all over.
All over. I would never build it like it's a conflict. I would obviously build that spirit interaction with like some sort of, it's, the end is to convince the spirit to let you have the vending machine. And then the surprise at the end would be like, as you're trying to lift the vending machine or move it around, like they're like and a bunch of these soda slimes like pop out, explode and pop out or something. I think that could be a really fun like intro adventure. It gives like a reason for all of them to focus, like to work together, because they're all trying to find it. They're going to be at odds with each other, which I think could be fun. Again, this might not work for every party, because you want someone to be like, you want people to work together, but I think a little bit of tension between party members can be fun. And then the last thing is I would offer up a solution in some capacity. So either through the otter spirit or some other NPC that they meet, suggest that maybe either selling the vending machine at auction and then splitting the money, or taking it to the best buyer and splitting the cash there, or whatever it is. Maybe the buyers all like, maybe you can't get the vending. That's the other thing. Maybe the vending machine's just like impossible to lift. It's like they can't. It's like vending machines. We have a
Thor's hammer.
We have a vending machine over there. I will tell you, 400 pounds is hard to move, let alone through the woods. And it's back to that like normal people. Like, how do you get a vending machine out of the woods? Like, we hiked 2 miles to get here. Like, we found this thing. We've talked the spirit into letting us keep it. We fought off the soda slimes. Now how do we get the vending machine back? Yeah. Like, that's its whole thing too. And that's also really, really funny to think that, like, let's say they start in a village closer to the land of hot water, and they need to make their way to Yadaman. They have to travel through the entirety of the gift of Shiratashi with a pack mule and a vending machine. Yeah. And that's really fun too.
Yeah, because it would make them either have to, like, maybe they use the river, one of the rivers. I don't know if there's, like, if they get to this river and they sail it down or something, use a barge. And then there's all the kind of river encounters that they could have. People could be trying to steal the vending machine, just trying to protect it. Yeah. You could start introducing some of the raiders, like Yokario or something like that.
If you wanted to, this would be really fun. Maybe the spirit companion, or the spirit could be a companion, by the way, could be a companion creature. Lets them take it, but wants to make sure it has a good home. And so now this is you can introduce an NPC.
That's cool.
Where it's like you have 2 mules and it's carrying a vending machine. There's 3 people that kind of don't really like each other yet. And there's just this one otter who's like, I love this thing. I can't wait to see it all shiny and new in Yadaman. And
that's like how you convince the otter to kind of like be cool with it. Like, look, we're going to fix it up. And
yeah, it's going to be great. Yeah.
And then like the mules get scared and take off, and the vending machine
goes crazy. Yeah.
The otter's like, no.
Oh my gosh. Oh, and that's really fun too. Like, what if like the otter is like this like loving, like lovey-dovey, but the vending machine gets in danger and it like turns black and gets feral, and it's like, you gotta find my machine. Julie, get Julie back
I will
for me.
Slaughter you all. Like, oh my God.
Super angry, and like, it starts to change and shift.
Yeah. Well, I mean, then you can introduce like how spirits can become demons.
Yeah. Like maybe it's not churning demonic, but like you can see like the transformation spirits have and how they're kind of a little volatile in their form. Yeah. I think that's really, really cool. Fun. I think it's a really fun adventure that that can lead, obviously creates a burden for people to deal with, but I think that's a really fun burden that could cause a lot, like carrying a vending machine throughout the entirety of Obojima. 1 is crazy, but 2 just will lead to a lot of wacky things. Yeah. I think it getting stolen or you being attacked. I think, perhaps.
I mean, like it is, as you're traveling along in the wilderness with it, is like a beacon saying, "Come steal me! I've got all kinds of cool stuff in here." It's like, it's like if you had a giant treasure chest and you were just kind of mule training it across the wilderness,
Also, at that same time, what if one of the player characters is a wizard? In that, what if their their intention was to make the vending machine their own? Like, how does that interact with this experience? Or maybe they're convinced to do that. Maybe partway through, one of the, they're sitting at a bar, they've made it 4 or 5 villages, they're taking a rest, and somebody comes over and tries to seed a little like, this vending machine should be yours, and I could help you.
Do you know how valuable these things are? Like what secrets they contain?
Exactly. And that's also really fun.
Start to sow the seed of discord.
I think that I think is an amazing way to lead to a bigger adventure.
Yeah.
I mean, the journey, not to make this whole campaign, but the journey to Yadaman alone with this vending machine, you could see that through 1st to 5th.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which would be, the quest of the vending machine is the funniest, most Obojima thing ever.
Yeah. I mean, when you get to Yadaman is such a bizarre like shift from like someplace like Okiri Village where, Yadaman is huge.
Ginormous.
And it's like, it would be like going from, I don't know, some rural town to like Chicago. Yeah. And just being like, what the heck is going on here?
What the heck? It's like wooden huts and the occasional, first aid trinket and, stuff like that too. In actual modern city, an actual modern city with a trolley and vending machines and apartment buildings,
crazy character. That would be, I think, the more like we're talking about it, it's like I would be so tempted to rush that. And I think, you'd mentioned earlier, just like don't rush this.
Yeah,
it's going to be so hard because one of the campaigns like I was thinking of is just like, there's something going on. Like you want to go to Sky Kite to see the jellyfish migration. That's like a thing you do, and you go there, and just that journey would be, there would be all kinds of things you could do on that. And Sky Kite itself is full of like, interesting stuff. And then I was thinking, well, maybe on the side of Mount Arbor is the Sky Salamander. And then, going up to the Ledge of Offering and having an adventure there. And I'm like, is that too soon? It's like, how slow or how fast do you do that? So, I mean, everybody's going to be different, but I mean, I would have to really watch like rushing it. And like, like you're saying, this adventure is just go get a vending machine and bring it back and take it to Yadaman. Like simple. But there's so much, there's so much Obojima lore. 'Cause as the DM, part of your, the job is going to be, seeding in the lore of the world and the sort of the metaphysics and the way things work and sort of the history of it as, the story is being told. Kind of like Lord of the Rings, where Tolkien's always dropping, the light of Elendil was, from, back in the days of the Maiar. And like, it's like, okay, I don't know what that means, but I'm getting a vibe that there's something ancient about this. Like, talking about the Nakadama, like you go by a Nakadama ruin from the days when the Nakadama Empire was like, and people are like, whoa, what's going on? You're just dropping bits of lore as they're making this journey so that your players know, okay, there's a history here. There's something deeper.
And, I almost wonder if Obojima as an experience is, and we'll never know until we start to play through it because we, obviously haven't done this, but I almost wonder if Obojima as an experience is better suited for many small campaigns where it's like, play with your group of adventurers for a year and get them from 1 to 7 and then start a different group of adventurers in the same, in a different area, and experience that and let your players enjoy Obojima over and over again through the little, minute, small, intimate moments that are happening all across the island. And then when you finally feel like they've got to experience and although the characters haven't learned all of this, the players have learned all of this information, finally introduce like maybe a final campaign where you get to take, maybe even jumping back to those original characters, or maybe even having their player's favorite character from each one of these. Obviously this would take a while to do, but like, let's assume that over the course of 2 years, I run a campaign, and you play 3 characters, and then when I start to close up this campaign, I have you pick your favorite of those 3 characters, and all of the players do that through all of the different things, and they come together to form the final group.
Oh,
and then you play from 7th to 10th, and that's how you end the campaign.
To fight, or
to come to some sort of conclusion.
Yeah,
I mean that's really
neat.
Interesting.
That's really cool. Yeah,
this is all in but this is all in theory, by the way, not in practice. That could be a terrible idea, but it's just
But yeah, when I first started playing D&D back in the Stone Age, like it was like I wanted to do the level 31 mage, just because I was just like, wow, let's pull that lever and turn the knob all the way up. But I think like most players, I'm imagining that the more and more I play, the more I just enjoyed levels 1 through 5 or 6, 8 maybe. But I loved rolling up characters. I like the act of creating a new character. I like the act of getting them to maybe 3rd or 4th level, like that was to me the most fun of playing role-playing games. And I think Obojima excites me for that reason. It's just like it's about the small story. It's about the close, tight-end story. And I'm really interested to see what people do with it.
Yeah.
That is going to be far out.
I think I don't, this wasn't done intentionally on our part, but I could really see that, the issues that players sometimes have with that early level. Cause as a DM, I'm sure, for me, my favorite part of running any game is always that first chunk of D&D.
The opening
chunk feels amazing. But as a player, it can feel, especially a player who has played 2nd and 3rd tier games, you can feel like, oh, I just want my next power.
Yeah.
And I feel like I can't do enough. And I think that's where you could even potentially use potions as a DM, as a way to offer ability without necessarily needing to be high level. So to give variety for the players to like think of interesting and unique ways to get out of it by having someone either brewing potions on your team or by them being able to readily purchase them.
Yeah.
You can give your players ways to experience like the fun parts of higher level through common potions.
Yeah.
And like unique ways of doing it too. Like this isn't the best potion to have, but I guess I'll make myself an old man. Like I guess I'll be an old man version of myself for 7 days.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll try to sneak into the house that way. Like my bones are aching and I feel terrible, but like it kind of worked as a disguise because they just saw me as, my 18-year-old self or something like that.
Yeah. Like it's weird. Like when I think of players, like which players, like there might be, like if I was running a D&D adventure, I'd be like, okay, I know my player group. I know these players are going to enjoy these kinds of experiences. Yeah. These other players are, and then I have my player group that they're just up for the weird thing. Like Ari, like if Ari was here, he would know what I'm talking about. Because it's just like Ari likes
this guy gets it.
Ari would be like, you give me weird limitations and I love it. Like if or like we're going to play a unique kind of a role playing game. Yeah. He'd be like, I'm all in. And I think Obojima is kind of like, it's a world where you've in some ways like choosing players who are like buying into what this thing is about. This is not going to be, like, oh, I want to get to the high level stuff so I can smash stuff. It's like, no. Like this is about really getting into your character. We're slowing down, like getting into the weirdness of the world, enjoying the limitation of it. Also like learning the cool little paths, like the potion brewing, that whole mechanic and that whole sort of world you can just go into. And I think if a player realizes like, okay, I'm in for an experience.
Yeah.
I'm not in for like, if they just want to play D&D, it's like, okay, go play D&D. But if you want to play this experience, like, people have to buy into it. And if they buy into it, then I think they're going to have an amazing time, because it's pushing to tell a different kind of story, to have a different kind of, there's just a different energy about it. So, yeah, I think that has to be another thing when you're a DM, like setting your players up and explaining to them what this experience is going to be about.
Yeah. I think to run a campaign effectively, there's some, you gotta, this is a relationship, and communication goes two ways. And therapists Adam and Jeremiah will help you and your party work through it for a small fee. But no, I think it's about communication. I think it's about talking a lot before starting your campaign.
Yeah.
Having a really clear expectation of, as a DM or a GM, explaining to your players what you want out of it yourself.
Yeah.
And then figuring out what they want out of it, and see if they are connected, and then try to figure out how you can make that happen. And then in addition to that, it's about, really reveling in that first section.
Yeah.
Of the playthrough of the adventures.
And even when you're like, you're talking, you're just like, a lot of times a DM, I know for me, like the urge to rush through a description of something, to be like, okay, you just kind of like walk around the field and you get to the barn and you kick the door in, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's like, no. Okay. I'm going to like slow everything down a bit and do a bit more sort of like, there's a great anime called Mushishi, and it's very, there's like a narrator who narrates it, and it's just like very slow. And, it says, and, that there's this, field of fireflies, and you're going up a dirt path that snakes its way up into the mountain, and some say the mountain is guarded by a spirit, and it's like slowing it down and just describing it in a very like fairy tale, very storybook kind of way. It's that experience will kind of, like, I know sometimes I'll use it where if I speak quietly to my players, they'll kind of lean in. But if I'm like, oh, everything's rah, and then they're like looking at their phone or like going and getting, but if I'm like kind of bring it in, so it's kind of puts a little bit of like, okay, as a GM, you get to sort of turn up your storytelling, ability, because this is a fairy tale, in a lot of ways. These adventures are fairy tales, and it is an anime world, or a Miyazaki world kind of vibe. So you get to, you have your loud, exciting moments, but then most of it's very close and quiet.
Yeah.
So I would try it and see if it works, and if it worked, great. And if everybody's like, I want to smack someone with a sword. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that being said, this is what Adam and I would do. Start your players on the eastern side of the island the Blackwater Wetlands, and it is combat through and through,
up to their neck and corruption.
It is Princess Mononoke bloodshed nonsense for 9 levels straight. So you can have both ways, but if I think this whole thing was really just for Adam and I to express just our general thoughts on what we've created over the year.
Yeah. I'm all in for getting the vending machine, man.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it right now.
That's what we're rolling.
With that being said, we're going to cut this podcast episode. If you want to see more of this kind of stuff, like just us giving our opinions and thoughts on the content we've made and stuff like that, let us know in the comments. Throw down any ideas on podcast episodes you'd love to see, and we're excited to do them. Thank you for joining us. This is the Obojima Podcast. Discord, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, YouTube. You can catch us everywhere. Follow us on social media and expect more content soon, as we're going to do some other cool stuff. So, yeah.
The Obojima continues.
The Obojima continues. Thank you so much, and we will catch you next time.